Racing fans everywhere know the names of famous drivers like Al Unser and his teammate Joe Leonard. But how many know the men who build their cars and keep them running? Here, for example, is Charlie Tabucchi, a key member of the team responsible for Unser's victories at Indy in 1970 and 1971.
They keep forgetting the man behind the scenes, which is a fellow like myself. Maybe sometimes we even kind of feel hurt when someone else is mentioned and we aren't, because I've never seen a man push a race car across the finish line yet.
The road to victory depends not only on expert mechanics, but on the use of superior products. And it begins in the garage.
I put in a lot of hours, but if you don't have a good product, you don't do a great job.
And the representatives of the manufacturers are always ready to explain what their products can do.
Primarily two types of face coatings for passenger car and high performance or race engines. One is the solid chrome plating on the face. The other is the moly coating on the face. Both have definite advantages. You have selected chrome. This has worked better for you than the moly. We have some engine mechanics who prefer the moly.
Bob, your company has made rings both ways with a definite machine step in it, and this bevel and straight, and we know that this here is a very decided factor in making a ring dry up a cylinder like we're all looking for, all us mechanics are.
The inside bevel on the ring imparts a torsional twist to the ring so that installed correctly on the piston, it scrapes the oil back down into the crankcase on the downstroke of the piston.
We have won races with pistons that have had nozzle plug up on our injectors and burn a piston, just run it in slow for another 10 or 15 laps and go right out and win again.
But a doctor of motors like Tabucchi is never satisfied, even with the best performance.
Well, I don't think I'm a mastermind or anything. The way I feel about it, no matter what I have done, I always have a feeling that I could have done it maybe a little teeny bit better. I kind of like to see when I take an engine down. Maybe I might have slipped somewhere. No man is infallible, but I feel another way. If a man can see his mistakes, he's never going to make that same mistake again.
Tabucchi's work on the engine is just one part of the team operation in Vel-Parnelli Jones' garage. Here is crew chief George Bignotti discussing his cars with Perfect Circle's Paul Russo, a top driver in his own racing days.
These cars here are sure a lot different, aren't they?
Yeah, Paul, they are a lot different than the cars that you drove, and I think it's just a question of...
Bignotti designs for consistency as well as speed. And this car was up with the leaders all through the 1971 campaign.
Configuration. This is the Samsonite Special, and that's driven by Joe Leonard.
And when Leonard climaxed the campaign with victory in the California 500, he clinched the national championship.
You were running, you had torsion bars in your cars, something like our old Roadsters.
Right.
And here we have independent suspension. We have very light Lockheed calipers with ventilated discs, which gives us real good braking, and they'll run all day without getting too hot. We're using a water radiator, and then we have oil coolers behind that. The oil comes from the engine, goes in through the water coolers, back into the oil tank, gets picked up, goes into the engine, back out of the engine into this oil cooler here, and then down to the bearings.
Another important part of the team, the transmission expert.
Yes,
He's doing our transmissions. Maybe Frank can explain some of the
See you back
deals
again,
he's doing
Frank.
on. I've got to go over and talk to Charlie Tabucchi, and I'll be back a little later. How they coming, Charlie? Is it any wear in the cylinders?
Well, George, it looks like it's, we were kind of lucky. We didn't pick up too much dirt on this last race. Just a little slight taper, and I think it's going to come out pretty quick. It means I have to work on them too bad at all. We're not going to be far off on our tapers.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, you see, we're just about one over now. All right, Paul, after looking at this cylinder just a little bit closer, I think maybe we better give it just another little bit because I think that I kind of overlooked a spot or two there. So
I noticed.
We'll give it another little bit here and make sure.
I noticed that you're pretty particular about your finish there, Charlie. And after running 200 miles, 500-mile race and running on the dirt tracks, do you find much taper in your cylinder?
Paul, I mean, you can't very well expect a engine to pick up dirt off the track and run 500 miles under real strenuous conditions without having a slight taper in the bore. And that's why you'll see me, I work down at the bottom of the bore to kind of straighten it up. And also, I always constantly have a set of mics to make sure that the bore size is just right, both ends of the bore. Now, I really am never too concerned with the size of the hole as well as I am, or as much, I should say, as the trueness, because a perfect circle piston ring, if it has a perfect surface to work on, that's what makes the job work out right. Because, you know,
that looks great. That's just what I like, and Paul will probably like to take a look at it, because...
Sure do.
That's what we like.
You make it nice and round, Charlie, for our rings.
That's right.
You sure do.
A round hole makes a perfect circle ring work.
Thanks a lot, George. Charlie, you always did have a good engine. And noticing here the way you check it out and everything, the cylinder finish and the size and everything, are you satisfied with the size and how it's come out there?
Yes, I am, Paul. With that, now I'm going to check this piston and see if I have the clearance that I think I should have. And in regards to the fact that you tell me I always had a good engine, I can't miss with a perfect bore and a perfect circle piston rings.
The next step on the road to putting the engine back together is to wash the block.
What I do always is I'll take it from here and I'll wheel it outside because I don't want the sprays going around the shop and getting another fellow's lungs. So if the weather is permissible, I go outside the door out there and then I wash it all down with a solvent. This is very important. I mean, it's a fact that if you don't get all the abrasives out, then you're not going to have much cylinder or ring life. So I usually spray it with two types of solvent, and then I get inside also with a lint-proof rag, and I wash it out. I make sure that these cylinders get absolutely as clean as I possibly can, and then I roll it into my engine room, and then I start assembly then, and only then after it's...
In the engine room, which is tightly sealed and air-conditioned to keep out dust, they're joined by Perfect Circle's Bob Roth.
Charlie's just getting ready to fit some rings in, Bob. He just cleaned the engine, and he honed it, and he's now ready to fit up some rings. Maybe you can help him out a little bit or teach me something, too.
I will. Check this.
I see you got a special tool there you made up.
Yeah, well, that's to be sure that the ring's setting square to the bore. Otherwise, there's a great discrepancy in feeler gauges. So, gee, that's pretty good. I mean, that's a good one. Now, we're going to use that on the top.
That ring gap kind of end clearance satisfy you, Charlie?
Yep. Just like Perfect Circle always does. They give me exactly what I'm looking for.
I know you're kind of critical on that because when I first come here, we were talking about it, and sometimes if the bore gets out a little bit too big, why, we lose a lot of clearance. So I think we got that squared away now.
Two things you do here, too. You also are sure that the ring is the correct size for the bore, and you're checking the end clearance so that you have the minimum end clearance to reduce any blow-by, excessive blow-by that you might have in the engine.
Yes, I found that is a very important factor, and now that Perfect Circle has been making me different size rings to fit my oversized bores, why, it's working out and proving to me and anybody else that would care to go through this program that having the proper butt clearance is a very important thing.
Right.
Well, Bob, we better check and see whether our ring groove depth is sufficient for this particular ring setup that we're using. What do you think about it?
By dropping the ring in the ring groove, Charlie, if it is flush or below the land, then the ring wall is the correct width for the groove depth of the piston.
Well, it seems to me like this in here is just
Very
right.
good. That's
Very
very
good,
good.
yes.
Second groove is very good
Second
also.
groove is very good, so looks like we can just set this one off to a side and get ready to put it in the engine.
Right.
Well, Bob, maybe we better check and see how much side clearance we have in here. See, that's 2,000.
Right.
What do you think about that? Is that,
That's
would
fine.
Perfect Circle say that that's pretty
fine,
good
Charlie.
fit?
Yes.
See, they both are nice,
Right.
snug 2,000.
Right.
Now we check the oil ring here. Of course, this is a kind of a preloaded thing, isn't
This
it?
is a side seal type oil ring, Charlie. This is going to be tighter in the groove, checking in this manner than your compression rings.
Mm-hmm.
How do you check for float, Charlie? I mean, the freeness of the oil ring.
That's what, see, it really floats real good. It's very snug, but it's free. There's no hang-ups anywhere. Naturally, as I put the rings on a piston, I'm always very careful that I put them on right, but then I like to recheck myself to make sure that I have the rings right side up, which I can tell by looking at this bevel, that inside bevel on the ring. So that one looks like it's okay.
Right.
That one looks like it's okay. And it looks like the oil ring is okay, so.
All the rings are correctly installed. The use of a good ring compressor is quite important in installing the rings in the cylinder bores. I noticed that you have your own ring compressors that you have manufactured here from
Yes, Bob.
a sleeve that is tapered.
Well, the way this works is that being the same bore as this particular engine that I am working on, why, it makes it less apt to distort one of these perfect circle rings. So it just slides right on through there, just like that, into the bore, and I have no worries at all about distorting the ring, which I have several of them of different size bores. It takes a little time to make them the first time, but then it's a real practical instrument thereafter. Distorting the rings this way, they only come to the desired compression of the size of the bore. And that is what makes it very important. And it is just automatically center themselves right in and go right on down without any strain at all.
The flange, of course, sets flush on the top of the block, and you don't stand any chance of the lower rail of the oil ring popping out of the ring compressor.
Yes, that is right. And sometimes they're screaming for another engine for another race, and you ain't got much time to fool around. Every second counts. Well, Bob, what do you think about this little instrument that we have here to put the seals on the valve stems without scratching the Teflon?
The installation cap there that you have machined is a very good idea. That reduces any possibility of scratching the Teflon as you push the seal down onto the valve stem.
I always be sure I put a spot of oil on it so that when I push it down, I kind of pre-lube the valve stem, really,
Right.
truly. That's about what it amounts to.
Right.
And I've always been told by you people that pressing that seal down just tight and no more than tight is the way to do it.
Down flat on the top of the guide, and if you go any use extreme pressure, Charlie, then you distort the valve seal itself. So what you're doing there with the installation cap, pushing the valve seal down just on top of the guide so the rest flat on the top of the guide will reduce any possibility of oil passing between the stem and the guide and causing oil consumption or a possible mixture of oil with the fuel and a detonation problem.
He has a special tool that we do not furnish with our valve seals, but we have a little plastic sleeve
Installation.
for an installation cap, I guess that's
Right.
what Bob just called it. that slides over, does a good job for any mechanic in his jobber shop doing. And he uses this, say, why he can do just as good a job as Charlie. Charlie just uses his over and over, and it's something he's kind of concocted himself, and it works very good, I see.
But an expert like Tabucchi is never satisfied.
I learn all the time. There's no doubt in my mind that if anybody thinks he knows it all, then that's when he's come to the end. He isn't going to get very far. I'm learning every day, and I'm 62 going on 63, so when I say I'm learning, I mean it very sincerely. I just go the other day, I'm out at Mallory's. I learned a couple of things about magnetos that I never dreamt about. So the story is, every day, if you want to, you can learn.
The payoff is in the performance of an engine on the track. And in 1971, at Indianapolis, Pocono, and California, the first Triple Crown in U.S. auto racing, the winning cars had one thing in common. They all rode to victory with perfect circle rings.